Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Passenger Seat. I am producer Derek. I am joined with my guest Karl. Here, he is a good family friend that is actually helping us get through here in Utah and making the transition a little easier. So I felt, hey, you know what? Let's have someone on in Utah. You're actually my first Utah guest on the show, and so. One of the things I really enjoyed hearing from your wife is that you're thinking about doing a podcast. So I wanted to get into a little bit of that conversation today too. But I just kind of want to know about Utah. I want to know about like you a little bit and everything that drives around here. So let's get started with like just going from the get-go. Have you always been in Utah?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we've lived since when I was a kid. I was born in southern Utah, where my dad's family is, and we've kind of moved gradually further and further north up the state as I've grown up. But yeah, I've always been here. So
Southern Utah favorite or more northern Utah is your favorite?
I mean, that's a complicated question because if any of my southern Utah family sees this and I say northern Utah, I'm not gonna say I have a hillbilly redneck Utah family. But if you've ever been to the small towns in southern Utah, that's the thing. No, yeah, I love northern Utah because the problem is I can't stand the heat. So I was born in St. George, which is
very more desert.
Yeah, desert. It's super hot, but I can't stand it. I like having seasons, and in northern Utah, we at least have like summer and winter. There's like a week in between usually, which we happen to be like in that week right now. I think today, so last Wednesday was 97, right? Mm-hmm. Or last Sunday was 97. This Wednesday is set to be like a high of 61.
Well, when we were driving here, I was worried we're going to be doing the podcast a little later. But if you guys can't tell from the shot, you guys might. It is raining outside. You guys might hear a little bit of rain, but the weather it's like dropped to like 75 degrees when you're driving here. It felt so great.
It's incredible. Yeah. It'll drop 30 degrees in a week, and then you're off to the races. So, which I way prefer. Summers are rough. Like I don't.
No, I will stop you right there because the summers have not been rough here. This was our first summer. It has been amazing. The weather has been great. I will maybe in a year from now, maybe I'll change my tone. But oh man,
see that's my thing. I'm a lightweight. Like people I don't know how people live in Arizona. I know, and St. George it'll get up to 110, 115. Yeah. We're from like more the like smaller towns outside of that where it gets just incredibly hot. But I can't take it. And people give me a hard time about this all the time because everybody's like, I hate winter, like there's like drugs you can take because winter's so rough. What? And I feel like I need like a summer seasonal depressive disorder because I hate the summer. I hate the long days. I hate the heat. I hate all of it. So, and I love cold, dark Utah winters where there's like 8 hours of daylight and it's just dark other than that, and it's always frigid. That's like ideal for me. So
your favorite.
I get crap about that a lot, but that's I don't know. It's a weird thing.
We're excited about having seasons for sure. Me and Christy, we did our episode a couple days ago. That's already up if you guys have watched our past episodes, but we're excited for the seasons. We are a little nervous about what the cold is going to bring, being that we are born and raised California 100%.
Yeah.
But I mean, any tips, any pro tips that we should be should know?
I think probably the best thing to do. So like, I don't know. It depends on where kind of you are. Like driving in the snow can be a revelation. That never occurred to me because I always grew up with it. But Ashley, my wife, that's also from Southern California, her first winter here was nearly a disaster. She was all over the road, California, driving in the snow. It's just, like you just have to do everything slower, which is it sucks. Yeah. The funny thing about it is the problem with winters driving in Utah is actually the Utah drivers.
So we've heard this. We've heard the Utah drivers. I thought California drivers.
People complain about that, but then you come to Utah and you're like, oh no, this is where the problem is. Utah drivers are the worst, and they're all because they live in Utah. There's tons of everybody's got these giant trucks, and so they're like, I don't snow, gravity. These are not issues I need to be concerned about because I've got 4-wheel drive. So there will be 6 inches of snow on the ground and they're flying by you at 80 miles an hour on the freeway. That's yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, that's the
the craziest thing we've seen, like when we're getting this, that Utah, like traffic laws don't exist, I guess, out here. We
right.
just today we were coming back from the grocery store and someone was like at the turning lane in front of us and felt, oh, you know what, the red light means nothing, I'm gonna U-turn anyways,
Yeah.
and just U-turns
Yeah.
on the red, and we're like, okay, and then we're like in the parking lots of the grocery stores and people just park on the red like fire
Oh,
lane
totally.
and just
Yeah.
will wait there, and then like
Yeah.
I'm like, where, like they're not even waiting for someone to come out and
No,
get.
no.
No, they just park the car
They'll
there.
pull up to the door and just
Yeah.
yeah, this is a good spot.
And I'm like, what
It's
is
insane.
going
I
on?
feel like California drivers, they're like, their thing is like they don't mind being up real tight, and like they'll, if they want to merge lanes, they'll get a corner in and just work their way in, which
Yeah.
is annoying, but it's like, yeah, I mean, everybody's used to this. The freeways are packed and stuff. Utah drivers' problems are, I think that's exactly that. Like, everybody just forgets that there are rules that regulate
Just no
driving.
rules.
And so everybody's just kind of a free for all. But yeah, that's kind of the big difference. But yeah, I mean, just going slow. That's the big thing with the snow, is just like everything just slows down, especially like in like our neighborhood. Like some places don't get plowed very good, and then
Okay.
that's what gets you. I've gotten stuck a bunch of times. And the first snow day of the year, if you can avoid driving, this is something when I was on the fire department. The first snow day of the year, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of slide offs. It's like everybody forgets that you have to slow down.
Slow down for
So
the
they're
snow.
all just flying, and like it's just like a huge event
Oh,
every year. The
jeez.
freeway shut down. And
So the
stuff, so.
fire department's like stocked up for the day with
Yeah.
all their employees.
Yeah,
and
you're
everything.
just assuming you're gonna have to be out all day
You're getting the
pulling
call
people
saying,
out of
"Hey,
the.
you know it's the first snow day.
Yeah,
You're working today. Sorry
everybody's
that it's your
sliding.
days off."
Yeah, so but, I mean, but yeah, I still love having, I love the winter and the different season stuff. So, it's not bad. Like we just kind of try and stock up more. Go out less when it's snow. But the last few years actually haven't been big snow years, and this year's supposed to be. So we'll see.
Okay.
I mean, that's what they're saying.
So our first one, we're gonna be screwed.
Yeah,
on
that's pretty much.
the
It's
big
because you
one.
guys
Yeah.
came.
Yeah,
So
it's because
now
we
it's gonna
came.
be
We brought
back
the snow.
again.
Okay,
We'll
great.
see.
Awesome. Something to look forward to.
Yeah.
But you hinted on it already. But you were in the fire department. You were an EMT.
Mm-hmm.
Down in Spanish Fork. Is that what?
Spanish
Okay.
Fork. Mm-hmm.
So what was that like? Because I know you don't do it anymore. But
Yeah, when we came up here, it's kind of hard to get. So it was a volunteer agency. I started. I was with them as an EMT for 6 or 7 years, and then actually went through the fire academy with them and did some on the fire side. Not for very long, but yeah, I just like I'd always worked kind of like a desk job. I'm in tech. That's kind of to pay my bills, and that was still the case then. But like I just wanted to do something more, not sitting in a desk, and something that felt meaningful. And I found out that a lot of agencies in Utah and kind of smaller towns have volunteer agencies where basically like you don't get paid, but you can go and if you get certified and go through the school to be an EMT and stuff, you can do that. And I jumped over it and just kind of fell down the rabbit hole. Just totally loved it. Ran as often as I could. It was a great job. It was exhausting, and it's hard on kind of a family, but yeah, and because I was doing, I would go to work at my IT job, all day, and then I'd come home and I'd be on the ambulance all night. And what it was like, we basically had pagers, and you had to be within 4 minutes of the station, and you would just get paged like in the middle of the night or whenever like a call went out, and you had to be there in a certain amount of time, go get the rig and go out and do it. And so it was a little different than what people think of for most, but it's actually like really prevalent throughout the country. As areas get bigger, they convert over to staffed agencies that have the departments all there all the time. But yeah, it's crazy. I mean, so Spanish Fork's like a really sleepy small town, and it's kind of a little cowboy town. We loved it. We loved living there.
Yeah, just a little south of Salt Lake City, like the main capital.
Yeah, just down in Utah County. But it's crazy. Like you see a whole different side of the town you live in doing that, and but we loved it. But we had we had a highway that was one of the most dangerous highways in Utah in our area.
Yeah.
So I got to go up a lot, up to canyon calls and like really gnarly car accidents and things up there. And so
what
got
made
a good
that
mix of
area so dangerous?
It's just so like the big thing about it is like it's the canyon's really narrow, and there's a lot of times there's just like a line like painted on that's the only thing in between the traffic going the two different directions, and there's very small, the lanes are pretty small, but the road goes up and down and curves sideways to sideways a lot, and then a lot of the time there will be really steep drop-offs off to one side where if you roll over it, like you're good night, you're going down for 100 feet or whatever, and so it made it, it was a little crazy. I think they've improved it a couple times, but it's still just like, there's still fatalities up there every year. So it's, those canyons tend to be, I think, and there are a lot of weather conditions specific to canyons that make them really dangerous too, like really high winds, more, it gets colder and there's more ice on the road, and so it's, it was interesting. I got to for a small kind of volunteer agency, like I got to go on a lot of calls, and I got a lot of mix of medical and trauma calls. So for somebody that gets really into that, I was really lucky to be able to be a part of it. So
nice. And so now you're doing tech stuff now.
Yeah, now we're just I'm just doing the tech stuff. I keep telling myself I'm going to get back into it someday, but it's a big, it's a big effort.
It's a big commitment.
It's a big commitment.
100%.
For sure. So yeah, now I'm doing tech stuff. I'm fortunate enough that my office is here in my house now.
Nice.
Which has been cool. Yeah, I've really enjoyed that. But yeah, I just, I do whatever they need. Kind of, I'm technically a network architect, so. But yeah, I just do the tech stuff all day, and that's been good. It's weird though, because I went from like basically living in my car and never being home to now like I leave the house like 2 times a week, and it's like sometimes I get so stir crazy in our house,
You're like, I need to get out. I
haven't gotten dressed in days.
All right, a little too much information there, Karl. I don't know about that. No, I get the feeling. I know the feeling right now because I'm in between jobs at the moment, and so I am sitting at home working on like small things and doing stuff, and it's like I need to get out. I need to go do something. I need to run around, kind of thing. And so totally. I get that stir crazy. But I mean, I love it here because everything is so close. I compare and like everything's so readily available, I guess, too, compared to, I don't know, like in California. I think the biggest thing is like if I wanted to go somewhere, I would be like maybe gone 2-3 hours because you'd be like stuck in traffic or this, and you might only be going a couple miles here and there. But like here,
but it's
I'm like, oh, I'm back home already. I got my chores done and what I needed to be doing.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess I'm just gonna sit here for the rest of the day and do other stuff.
That's a totally wild thing that, like, going to California, like, experiencing was just, the way, like, everything's, like, geographically a small area. Because I would look at my GPS and be like, oh, this is 3 miles away. It's no big deal. Like, I'm thinking, like, Utah, I can be there in 30 seconds. And then, it's like an odyssey getting there. So
that's been a thing that I've been discovering. And, like, people will ask, like, oh, so how far was it? And I go, oh, that took about half an hour to get there. They go, no. How far is it? I go, I don't know. I know it in time. And, like, so I'm, like, making that transition here. I'm like, so that's about 3. Okay, but I'm trying to play that game where I'm not putting it into a time perspective of how far.
Sure.
But it's funny, like coming to your guys' place, you guys are out in Kaysville, and so it is about a 25-minute drive for us, but like I realize we're going pretty far in that 25 minutes. It's not like
comparatively, right.
Yeah, and I'm like,
so true.
25 minutes would barely get me to like close to work back then, and work was close for me. So it's one of those things I'm like, oh man, we like this is crazy. Like we seem like we drive less right now, but like we're driving further when we drive, kind of thing.
I know people that commute 50-60 miles to work every day, and it's the same kind of commute time frame that you experience in California, being like 10 miles down the 405.
So that's just crazy. That's just
there's a lot of difference. What's the main cultural, or like what's the main difference in like that stuck out to you? I'm just curious, coming to Utah from California. I've asked Ashley this question.
I think it's the pace of things. The pace is a lot slower, and I love it. Kind of thing. But there's times where I find myself and Christy, we are moving way quicker than a lot of people are, just because we're so used to the pace in California. And so it gets to where like, okay, wait, we have to slow down. We're like,
Yeah.
and I'm like trying to just like take that patience in, and like I'm at the cashier and I'm having a conversation with the cash register
Uh-huh.
attendant, and instead, like back in California, you didn't get that. You didn't.
No,
It
yeah.
was that like
Because
boom,
there's
boom, boom,
20
boom,
people behind you.
exactly,
Yeah,
and you're
right.
waiting. So where I'm having
Interesting.
this thing, and I was at the post office yesterday. We were getting stamps, and we were looking through the books of stamps because we were getting our wedding invitation stamps, and Christy wanted ones. I wanted T-Rexes. She didn't want to let me get the T-Rexes. But the lady next to us, the three people that she helped, she knew them by name. And
Uh-huh.
and like she even called the like guy as we were leaving. She goes, "Patrick, come on up." And he, like she kind of joked with him like, "What do you want?" kind of thing. And he goes, "Oh, I'm just dropping." And I'm like, "This is crazy because like they're having. It's not just a postal worker that's doing a service for someone that no one remembers. These people actually
Sure.
are leaving an imprint on these other people's
Yeah,
lives, and they're there." And they're part of a regular routine for some of these people, and I appreciate that so much more. Like
for sure.
you see it in movies, you see it in like TV shows where like you might have that corner deli or that corner thing
Mm-hmm.
where you walk in and someone they know your name.
Yeah, kind of small town. Yeah,
Yeah,
for
and I
sure.
go, I kind of want that. I want someone to like like recognize, and then when I'm not coming in, they're gonna give me shit for not. How come you weren't here getting your Italian sub
Yeah,
on this?
right.
I'm like,
It's
oh,
so true.
I had this to go do, and then they're like, oh yeah, and then, but like, cause you got that in some places in California, like if you really had to take the time to get to that point,
Mm-hmm.
and it was one of those things where because the convenience factor in California, you didn't necessarily take the time to drive out of your way to the same sandwich shop or the same
Sure.
like
Oh
thing,
yeah,
or like
sure.
if it's a convenience store, they're on every corner. They're pretty regular here too. It's not like I'm making it sound like this place is like, oh, it's so deserted, you can't find anything. That's not how it is here. But like the convenience store that's on the corner of your like your place is the one that you go
Yeah,
to
that's like
all the
your.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
it's not out of a thing because like, oh, I felt like a Slurpee, I'm gonna go to this 7-Eleven or this 7-Eleven or this 7. No, you go to the one that's
Yeah,
like right there,
yeah.
and the guy who's in there is gonna know your name or
Mm-hmm.
gonna recognize you, and you're gonna get a high and all this stuff.
That's
And
interesting.
so
Yeah, yeah.
and
That's totally like I just take that for granted. But
yeah,
yeah, that's kind of
and I think you will get to a point where we probably will take that for
sure.
granted,
Yeah, sure.
and it's okay. And I think the rest of the country, rest of the world, that happens, and it's just
Mm-hmm.
you get comfortable, so it's fine. It's not an issue. But that's the thing I've noticed more here is that I guess there's more common decency to the fellow human.
Yeah.
I guess is
If
what
you know
I've
you're gonna
appreciated.
see that person again, or
Yeah,
that, yeah, there's kind
yeah,
of a yeah.
and so
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, because I when I was in Tennessee, I for a thing I was hoping to get some of that like Southern hospitality, and I didn't really get it like I thought the
Yeah.
way I was gonna get it.
Sure.
And I don't know if I was just playing stereotype of the stuff, or if I looked like an out of towner kind of guy, and I was
Uh
getting
huh.
that vibe. But here I haven't had, and we've Christy made the joke I think or talked about it on one of our episodes where like the rudest person we've actually like encountered was from California, and that's like living working here now, and I'm like, crap, I hope we don't become those rude people and, like to somebody else. I hope we're the good Californians that like have a good reputation with
Oh no,
everybody.
I'm sure you are. Actually, like, there's a lot of. It seems like there's a lot of, for whatever reason, California and Utah. There's a lot of exchange.
Yeah,
I don't know. It seems like the people that I know and that I've known growing up that weren't from here were often from
California.
California. Yeah,
Okay.
and maybe that's just because it's there's so many people in California. But yeah, it does seem like, I mean, like there's a lot of people from California here and people from Utah that are moving there. So, but yeah,
That
it
kind of
is,
crossover kind
yeah,
of thing.
it's
Yeah.
cool.
So I wanted to get into a little bit of you're trying to start a podcast.
Yeah,
So I think that's cool. I love it when people are willing to take on technology and do their own thing. But what I love about your podcast is a thing that I near and dear. And I'm actually wearing my Maiden Voyage shirt, not sponsored, but these guys are awesome over there. Cryptozoological studies.
yes,
And
yes,
so I'm a big proponent and lover of the Bigfoot mystery out there and everything else. So that's one thing that you're really enjoying as well. And so
yeah.
you're thinking about starting a podcast based around that whole
Yeah,
concept?
based around the kind of the history and the history and the kind of the science of the unexplained and paranormal and cryptozoology and stuff. And it's interesting because in researching and things, I mean, this is something that I've just always had a bug. Like, like I got someone, I can't remember who it was, but somebody gave me the advice that, like, if you really want to start a show or a podcast or a blog or something, make it be about that thing that you could sit up and, at a bar and talk about all night.
Yeah.
And that for me is it's totally this.
Bigfoot.
So I've always had it. And there seems like there's a lot of like kind of that theme of sort of material that's out there in podcasts and stuff. But despite that, like I've really wanted to do it. And because there are some interesting kind of angles that I feel like I can approach. Like one of the main things kind of to focus on kind of early on is this question that I have in doing my research. Like I've always been curious about, there were some Gallup survey polls that were done in the early 2000s, the late 90s, as well as some other institutions that did some surveys about Americans and their beliefs, and particularly their beliefs in the paranormal. And I would have assumed that would be like a kind of a small minority of people that report believing in something like that. It ended up being
much larger than you thought.
Yeah, it ended up being like 75%, like 3 out of 4 Americans, which blows my mind. And I've been really curious to try and understand why and what, like digging into, like, so like contacting people and reading about people and materials, people that really believe in some of this phenomena that's kind of unexplained, and why they're why they hold that conviction, and how it's still such a big prominent, because it's kind of a paradox, right?
Yeah.
Our society, science is our scientific process, and the structure of science is central to our society. It's kind of the bedrock on which kind of modern American society is built, like from everything from our from healthcare to the economy, like everything we kind of that's what we learn in schools and everything. And yet, despite that, there's this majority of people in America and that believe in this stuff. And what's interesting, so I was like, well, if that's the case, if that was a predominant thing, surely there would be, you would be able to find evidence in other places. And so I'm kind of researching and looking into that, and there are dozens of universities and colleges and schools that have paranormal and parapsychological research programs. And the federal government has had has actually had intelligence projects based around concepts that we consider paranormal and parapsychological. And it's actually, we think of it as being kind of in pop culture, and it's largely been relegated to kind of like the entertainment industry, and I love a good horror movie, but that doesn't really, modern sort of Hollywood horror doesn't really depict what like the actual kind of folklore and legends,
I mean,
and mythology.
There's stuff that goes before movies and things like that are in reports and things like that.
Yeah,
and
right.
So it's not. I get the concept of that. It could, but I think there's still something out there, and so I don't want to like harp on anyone's religion or anything like that, but where like a lot of people believe in something much bigger than them as well, without any scientific proof,
right?
Kind of thing. So I think like
Totally.
for people who come across it and go, "Oh, Bigfoot, there's no sign," I'm like, oh, well, I mean, you can't go one way or the other on this. So how can we knock these people? And I mean, do you really want to be the person with egg on their face when like there is a Bigfoot that's found?
Yeah.
I mean,
or extraterrestrials.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many different. Well, and the other interesting thing, so I went way more academic initially with the first, like, because I kind of wrote the first few episodes of the podcast, and then I realized like I had to go back and rewrite them because they were way too academic and not actually that entertaining, besides just for me. But I read this book about the structure of scientific revolutions is a really big deal in the science world by Thomas Kuhn, and it was kind of a landmark book on how our perception of science, our understanding of science grows, and what we, how we know kind of what we know. And basically, like, we think of our understanding of science as being kind of this linear thing where we acquire knowledge and we gain knowledge, we add more and more things to it, and it's just kind of like there's a beginning point where we're primitive and we don't know things, and there's an ending point where we know everything. And in reality, there are these kind of cycles, and he calls them paradigms. He actually coined the term paradigm shift in this book, but basically, he says the problem is, so you have scientific theory and you have a scientific understanding that you base the world on. And in general, it does kind of progress on that linear thing. We do studies and experimentation, we observe the natural world, and our understanding grows. But then there are anomalies. Mm-hmm. And those anomalies, as time goes on, either your scientific theory broadens to be able to kind of encompass and make sense with these anomalies, or the anomalies grow. And eventually, if your predominant theories of the day cannot explain those anomalous kind of events and concepts, you reach what's called a crisis point, where science starts adopting and looking into exotic and crazy ideas. A couple examples of this would be like when classical physics was king up until the early 1900s, where they started realizing like our understanding of the way the universe should work on a molecular level is not working. Like there's all kinds of things that that don't work, and they had to start reaching for these really exotic answers, and that's how we came up with things like dark matter and dark energy and string theory. But anyway,
but even in that sense, like, there's still things that we're still like have no clue about, and like we're still trying to figure it out. There's still like I don't know the article, but there was a thing where it's like there's a particle that's like shifting in and out of existence.
Yeah.
And they have no fucking clue.
There's no idea. Yeah. And when they see it, they think that it's got to be like and they even retested that particular thing. Like they redid that study. Like they looking at it several times, thinking, and it absolutely does. It breaks the laws of physics.
Yeah.
And that once that exists, it's kind of like an oh shit scenario for the science world, because eventually, if you don't come up with an answer for these things, your science, you're going to have, and that's where the term paradigm shift came from, is because science makes these giant kind of evolutions where it changes rapidly. And so I kind of looked at it from that perspective, and I thought, so, it is entirely from a scientific standpoint, if we assume that, there is something to any of, if you can say that some of the kind of anomalous things that people encounter and that they talk about, if there is even a small percentage of that is credible, then eventually there are going to have to be, eventually science is going to have to start expanding what it considers possible in order to answer that. And a great example, have you ever heard of Tabby's star or Tabitha's star?
No, I can't say I have.
So this is super fascinating to me. So there's a star, and they can learn a lot about like solar systems out in the universe based on the light coming from the star, and the light from that star will dim at regular intervals when the planetary objects and things in that system go in between it and the Earth. And you expect those to be really regular patterns because they, that things in orbit are consistent. Well, there's this one star that the light patterns were just shifting up and down in a totally erratic, totally
I actually think now I remember reading something on this. Again, don't know much of the details, but I think it does sound familiar as you're explaining this.
Yeah, it's like so they were like, oh wow. And this anomaly occurred. Well, very rapidly, they went through every theory they could think of, and they just can't explain it.
Yeah.
And since then, more theories have come out that are possibilities, but they just don't know how this is possible. Yeah. And so you've had credible physicists and astrophysicists and astronomers coming out and saying it is entirely possible that there is some sort of sentient structured life in this system that has created something that is interfering with the star's light, because it's obviously not, and it's an example of how, the scientific community actually like embraced or was suggesting
Yeah.
like these are possibilities
Yeah.
because of that anomaly. And that's just kind of what, in getting into my podcast, I thought, man, because when I started, like, I loved the stuff. I was fascinated about it, but primarily for the history. I didn't really put a lot of stock into a lot of it. So, but in the last year, I first started kind of doing research for this a year ago. I've read thousands of hours of books and novels and source material. I got a subscription for historical newspapers, and I've been just really getting into it. And there are in the excuse me, in the overarching world of the paranormal and the parapsychological, there are specific examples that are totally legit.
Yeah.
Like these are coming from totally reliable people,
Yeah.
numerous people. They're mixing with we have actual like data for them, and you don't, like
Well,
people don't, a lot of times like people don't really realize. I think people don't realize like how much of that kind of is scary legitimate. And
Yeah.
as I'm reading it and going through it, I'm going like,
You're making yourself a little nervous?
I'm going like, oh shit, this is not what I was expecting to find. And in a lot of cases it is. I'm like, yeah, sure. But yeah, anyway, so.
Well, because you have stories of pilots that are for the military that are hush hush about what they come across. And now we're seeing the government shift on that a little bit because it's going, okay, no, we want reports. We want to put stuff out there. You have the kind of thing that right now, are you familiar with the storming of Area 51?
Oh my God.
This
oh,
meme thing that I don't
Yeah.
know what's going to happen. We're recording this before it happens, but it's supposed to happen pretty soon, right?
Yeah.
September something?
Supposedly.
Yeah. But I mean, honestly, like it's so dumb.
It's so
but
great though. It's so
it's
funny.
one of those things where you go, but what if? But what
Well,
if?
yeah. It's been I when I read that, I was just dying. Like I hope no one gets hurt, but the entertainment value of watching a few hundred crazy people
Yeah.
storm Area 51.
Well, you wonder because you go, is the government big enough and powerful enough to hide information that we have of extraterrestrial,
Sure,
of
that's a great
Bigfoot, of
question.
paranormal, things like that?
Mm-hmm.
Then I go, I mean, I don't think so. I think
Yeah.
the government's pretty dumb.
Yeah.
And so I don't think they're smart enough for some of that. But then you get the conspiracy people going, well, you're pretty dumb to think that the government's dumb and that's what they want you to think.
Yeah.
Then you go down this whole kind of concept of, holy shit, what do I think is real?
Yeah.
But I do, the only thing I can grasp is the scientific understanding that I have of science. And
Sure.
so taking that information and taking that and then going, okay, was that a ghost in my house or was that a pipe that was
Sure.
creaking or was
Yeah.
that a floorboard?
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this. I don't think I've talked on it. I've talked about it probably on one of the other podcast shows I've been on. But I tried to ghost hunt once.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah,
Do an
and
investigation?
during college years, ghost hunters on sci-fi was a big thing, and I made a spoof video for a college class. It was funny. I thought I loved it, but then I go, you know what? What if we try this for real? What if we actually go do this for real? And so we got into a warehouse that my dad worked at, and we're able to get out after dark and all this stuff. And I realized it scared the shit out of me. I did not want it. I'm like, what if something does come out? What if on camera?
Well, and those are the moments, right?
Yeah.
Those
And
are
I
the
go-
moments you start wondering.
And I go, I don't know if I want to have this answer. I don't know if I want. And like I've had things where like, okay, what if we go camping out in like crazy out in the middle of nowhere where Bigfoot potentially is, and see if we find a Bigfoot. And I go, that sounds cool. But then I go, I don't know if I want to come across a Bigfoot.
Know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
And-
no. Yeah, for sure.
Because you don't know about the unknown. Like it.
You really and sometimes and a lot of times, yeah, you a lot of the stories and cases and things people say and historically are easy to dismiss because they're, there's not that corporeal kind of empirical evidence that comes with it. But in a lot of cases, there are. I'm way fascinated when we talk about cryptozoology about this event that happened in France now I'm not going to know. I want to say the 17th century, somewhere thereabouts, a few hundred years ago. It's the Beast of Gévaudan is kind of the the nomenclature that's most often known by, but there was a creature that was attested as being bigger than a wolf and having very distinct features that were not wolf-like. It the kind of the answer that the government at the time and things kind of came out with, and the scientific community is this had to be some, like a wolf, but there's this creature that hunted all over this big region of France, of the Gévaudan, that hunted and killed, I mean, I think like over 100 people.
Oh wow.
Don't quote me on that,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it
but
ate a shit ton of people.
yeah.
And the people that saw it, they said things like, well, it had this kind of dark stripe that ran down its back, and it, it had, a lot longer kind of front legs than back legs, and they all universally, people that saw it and often case were attacked by it, kind of gave this description, but it didn't match with what lived in that area, and really didn't match with anything.
Yeah.
Like, and there are some crude drawings and things that were made of it, but this thing, and these are people that saw wolves all the time. They lived in there. This is a very rural area at the time. It was, the wildlife was very. They would have known if this was a wolf, and it was literally decapitating and eating people and dragging them off by the dozens over a couple of years. And they mobilized at points thousands of people out on hunts to try and kill this thing. They never conclusively figured it out, and never even came close enough that you can go, oh, okay, that's definitely it. And so, you wonder, like, we all kind of think, and obviously that was the historical example, but we all kind of think like, these are things that happen to other people and stuff.
Yeah.
But what if, and in talking to people, getting ready for the podcast, I've been surprised how many people I know that I would have never assumed would like think anything.
Yeah.
I've actually encountered things and had stories of things that they couldn't explain. It's blown my mind.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. And I think that's what's the beauty about, like, the internet nowadays, where, like, in the 90s and the early 2000s, the chat rooms that were there was very specialized, and you'd find the people that had these. And it was a weird situation because you didn't know if you could believe.
Yeah,
but
right.
now with the internet and the way things have gone out, and with social media and
exactly.
or multimedia stuff like this here, where people have an open platform to be truthful to, I say it with a grain of salt, but
sure.
I think more and more people are willing to come forward with their experiences because they're not alone. They're not like they're not someone in the dark going, "Oh man, yeah, people are going to think I'm crazy if I talk about it."
It's true. Yeah.
But again, for me, I've never experienced paranormal, so I don't know. I want to believe there's something more that I don't understand, but at the same time, I don't know if I really want to experience it. I've never had an experience, and I don't know how I'm going to react.
Sure.
Same thing with an alien encounter kind of thing. Am I gonna freak out? Am I gonna be holy shit? And then you get into that mind of like, okay, if it was only me that experienced this thing, and then I go and I tell people, what are they gonna think about it? What are they?
Such a good question.
And because now you have that whole societal kind of pressure on you that goes, oh, this guy's batshit crazy.
Yeah.
Because that's what we were believed to think about people who thought that way.
Exactly.
But now it's becoming the norm, and more
kind
and more
changing.
People, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised the more and more that you talk to people about it and go through the motions. So let me get a little bit back on topic here of podcast wise. What will be the first episode that you put out? What's going to be the topic?
So the first episode is going to be just kind of introducing the podcast. Going to be kind of based on an investigation of the overarching question of this kind of paradox between how we are a very scientifically based society, and we tend to believe in, if there isn't like empirical strong scientific data backing something up, it's not real, versus the fact that that same society has a significant number of people, perhaps even a majority, who believe in the paranormal. And the fact that I want to investigate, I want to find out kind of why that is, and talk to people and kind of get into the history and tell some of the stories and things. And so the first is going to be kind of an introductory kind of microcosm of because I've written out and structured out the entire first season at this point, and it's going to be kind of an introduction of what to kind of expect for all of that and what it is, and things like that.
So guys, if you guys are watching this, the episode, it will be up next week. No, I'm just kidding. I'm putting on. But do you actually have a game plan of when you plan on with the first episode?
So we're gonna go live with the first episode on October 1st.
Okay,
and
so it actually is soon.
Yeah,
okay,
we're gonna rock.
I was giving you shit, but
yeah, no, yeah. I mean, I started a year ago. It was funny. We were getting into fall, and I was getting into it, and I was like, I want to do something like this, and it's so much more work. Doing a good podcast, so much more work than I could have ever thought, especially with a storytelling format. It's just been, and so like I rewrote 50 iterations of the first one before I really found like a good place where I could kind of come at something uniquely and tell some good stories. And so I've just been doing research for a long time, but yeah, it's looking like the first episode will go out October 5th, and then I'm actually going to do them once a week through October.
Okay.
And then after that it'll be every other week.
Okay.
So
cool.
Yeah, I've been pre-recording and sound editing. I'm definitely gonna drag you in, and if you don't mind, help.
I can definitely help.
I do not have a very good artistic background. I was in the theater in high school, but I don't have. So that part of it's been an adventure for me to learn. But the technical aspects of creating a podcast, but it's been really fun too. It's been really
I don't mind at all helping out. But
cool.
Do you have a working title or an actual legit title, or is there a website that we can potentially?
So it's gonna be called Portents Podcast.
Okay.
Portents. And yeah, it's the website is www.portentspodcast.com.
Awesome. Cool. So yeah, I
appreciate you shouting it out.
Yeah, no, not a problem at all. I love people who are taking that same passion and drive. And I've said it before on the show, like the biggest thing that I love about when I find someone who has a passion for something, and even if I have no idea or no real knowledge of that passion, I still want to hear their story. I still want to go through the motions with it.
I love talking to people about what they're passionate about. It's so fascinating. It draws you into it.
It does, especially when you find someone that's that passionate about something.
For sure.
That you never could be passionate about. Like, I like if you talk to someone like, okay, a bad example, but like I Pokemon kind of thing, and you find someone who's like the diehard Pokemon card collector.
Yeah.
Like, I appreciate Pokemon. I'm not a diehard, but like, when you find someone, you're like, holy shit! Like, I appreciate that
it's
much
so
drive and passion that you have.
It's so true. You find out things, and like because I mean, ultimately the things people really care about or passionate about kind of all lead back to those sort of basic human things. And it's interesting seeing how, because you're right, like Pokemon, even things like Dungeons and Dragons, like a lot of these
we're
kind
getting
of games,
started to do our campaign.
We're gonna start rocking out.
That is gonna be fun.
That's gonna be a new experience for both of us.
I know.
But it's way cool to like see why people love the things they do and stuff, which is why I love the format of this. I'm excited for you to do more episodes of this.
Yeah, I'm super excited that I can get my footing back on everything. Like I was telling Christy, it was a dumb move to do it before we left, but I needed to get my feet wet
for sure
and do it because I needed just that sanity. I have all this equipment. I have all this stuff. Why am I using it for other people's stuff? Why not do it for myself as well as doing for other stuff?
Absolutely.
And so that was where I'm like, let's just do it. It's sitting in a closet most of the time when I'm not doing a job.
And when you've got a creative passion, like you just feel like you've got to be doing so. I find like I am deeply depressed if I don't have like a project.
Yeah, I get real antsy, and so like since like because I'm in between jobs right now, it's like, okay, I've been working on leather things. I printed some stuff on 3D printers and painting. I've been like doing weird programming stuff. I've just been doing all kinds of stuff, and so it's like, okay, and then you've got on top, because we just moved, we have all this new house stuff that we're doing and trying to get that all situated so we feel comfortable there. And so I've always loved cooking. I've always loved creating stuff. It was a week ago or something. I don't know. It's on my Instagram. You guys can go see it. But I was like, I want a strawberry pie. So I just went and like bought all the stuff to make a strawberry pie.
I love that so much. It was
such a good pie.
That's so great. Those are the best. Yeah.
Yeah. And so those are the things that you just like. I have to constantly be doing something,
Yeah.
getting involved in something, and building
Doing
with my
something
hands
and
on
creating
it. Yeah.
something. Yeah.
And so that's where this kind of came into
sure.
play. But even with the Dungeon and Dragon stuff let's transition a little bit. We're getting into that.
Oh yeah.
We're gonna be starting our first campaign in I think 2 weeks from now that we're gonna try to do.
Yeah.
But like you and me have both been like online researching, going through, and we both have a researcher's like mentality that we go through and try to figure stuff out and see how. And that's I think what's really cool. But I'm excited to just like. I don't know. I've been more excited, I think, about the building aspect of like the D&D than I've been of actually the gameplay. But like once we get into the gameplay, there's going to be a whole nother switch that turns on. Kind of thing.
I feel like that's such a big part of those, like creating your character and like I had no idea what like a big deal all of this was.
Oh, I knew. I just didn't. I didn't have people who were willing to nerd out with me.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's the thing. Like I'm total geek. I'm totally comfortable in my nerd shorts and everything like that.
Right, yeah.
But they're like around like the people that I would hang out with, like there was some people but never willing to like put the time and effort in.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I'm like, maybe I was just hanging out with immature people, but I'm like, I found adult people who want to play kids toys.
Do this.
Let's go do
this. This is awesome. Well, and it's something, like we were kind of talking about, like D&D, like it's interesting, like it has become a cultural. Like it's, it started off, it was kind of like the stereotypical like nerd thing.
I'm okay with being a basement dweller. I'm
fine
with that.
I'm all about it. I mean, I work from home doing computer stuff all day, half the times I'm not even dressed in the morning, but I do like it's interesting to see how it's become so much more mainstream, especially considering how like involved it is. But it gets back to storytelling, and that's what I've learned.
Yeah.
As I've been preparing for it, and especially because I'm doing the kind of dungeon master role of telling the story and guiding people, like it all comes down to we all want to live in J.R.R. Tolkien's brain. Like that's that fantasy world, and it's just a new way of expressing that. I got way into Skyrim. But thought I never would have gotten into D&D, but ultimately it's the same
thing.
Yeah.
So we've discovered this place called Evermore. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's down in Pleasant Grove. It's actually a live action D&D kind of place that you have.
That's a big thing.
And so I'm like, we so have to do this once we get we got to take our whole campaign down there and hang out. And so I know again, going off the nerdy topic, and I love it, but it's one of those things where it's like you're gonna have fun doing the things you love and are passionate about, and
it's true.
And I think that's one of the things. And we didn't even get into because I'm getting you into airsoft, and then so that's a whole nother nerd thing that
I've been going deep into that too, getting ready for that.
Yeah,
that's gonna be great.
After dinner, I've got all kinds of goodies to go over with you and everything too tonight. But that's a whole nother topic, and what I'll probably have down in the future after you get a couple episodes out of your podcast, I'll probably have you back on the show and just kind of keep an update with everything that way.
That'd be great.
Because I know we could talk for another hour very easily.
Oh, for sure.
But the fiance and your wife would probably be mad because you guys are probably hungry, and we've got fresh pizza that we're going to be making in there very soon. But on that note, let's end it here. Let's call it a show, and we'll definitely continue our conversation on another episode down the line.
Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
No problem at all.
Blast.
Yeah, so guys, thank you for joining us on another episode here of The Passenger Seat. This has been Karl. Go check out his podcast on, you said October 5th or 1st?
October 1st.
First, okay, because you changed it out twice. So
did I change it?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
So October 1st,
I
just give you guys that heads up and everything. Once again, that name of the podcast was?
Portents.
Perfect. So guys, thank you for joining us. I'll see you guys on the next episode. Bye.